to Lush Living. Today's topic is how to age gracefully and become life fit without adding a single exercise to your day. I'm Katie Lush, the creator of Lush Living. I'm coming to you from Chicago River North Pilates, which is the studio that I teach out of and own, and teach things like Pilates, gyrotonic, and restorative exercise, and have been for the last 17 years. Kind of incredible. Thanks for joining me today. So let's just dive right into the topic at hand. So what I've witnessed over the years is that people and the way that they move can indicate whether somebody looks and feels old or looks and feels young. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it when you're out and about seeing people walk around. So Tony Riddle of the Naturalist Lifestyle said it best when he said that your movements are a better indicator of age than the number of birthdays that you've celebrated, right? I agree with that. Joseph Pilates also has a really insightful quote that a man is as young as his spinal column. So it's not enough just to age in years, right? It's really about how you can age gracefully and feel and look young as you progress in years. And can this happen? I personally fully believe that it can. And a good example of this is that I had two clients. It's a wife and husband couple. They came to me about 10 years ago, and they were in their 60s. And in the last 10 years, I've witnessed a transformation in their strength, their mobility, and their balance. And as a result of that, I've really seen them improve their body mechanics and therefore look younger and feel younger. So it can happen. It can absolutely happen that even though you progress in years, you can actually start to look and feel younger. So what's the big secret, right? So in my history, what I've really noticed is that it takes a triad. It takes gaining strength, increasing mobility or flexibility, and improving balance. And I really think that those three things are the most important ingredients to actually looking and feeling younger as you age. So this couple that came to me 10 years ago, their goals were things like keeping up with their grandchildren, traveling without incurring any pain or injury, and walking the streets of Chicago with ease. So to me, those goals are about being life fit. And at the end of the day, that's all we really want, is to be life fit, to be able to get through your day without your body sort of inhibiting you from getting those tasks accomplished. So let's talk about the ways that we can, help you age gracefully and make you feel more life fit. So the first thing we're going to do is check out how you're standing, because believe it or not, the way that you stand can actually improve your strength, mobility, and balance. So I'm going to stand up here on this table. So if I were to drop a line, hopefully you can see me. If I were to drop a line straight down from my hip bones, it's those little headlights, those protruding bones in the front of your hips. If I dropped a line straight down, that line, I would want it to end up right in the middle of my ankle where it starts to divot, right? So if I dropped a plumb line straight down, my ankles would sort of straddle that line, and that's about hip bone distance apart. So we want our feet to stand at least this width apart. Another indicator is roughly about 2 fist distances apart from your big toes. So we want our feet about this far apart, and I'll tell you why in a moment. The second ingredient is we want our pinky toes to point straight ahead. So just like a car with a malalignment, if a car's tire is slightly misaligned, that tire wears down, and so you either need to replace the tire or correct the alignment. Your feet are the same, so if your foot is slightly turned out, it's going to wear down the parts faster and potentially produce an injury in the future. So we want our pinky toes to point straight ahead. And the third ingredient of standing well, I'm going to turn sideways. A lot of people have a natural tendency to want to lean their weight forward over their toes. So I'm going to encourage you to back your weight up into your heels so that your toes are light and liftable, right? So most people want to be here. Picture like a countertop in your sink. Do you lean your hips on your countertop to wash your hands? Or can you back your hips up more over your heels? So why do we care? Why would we choose to do those things? So glad you asked. So when you back, well, let's start with the first thing. When your feet are about hip bone distance apart, it gives you a better base of support. If you walk with your feet very narrow together, which a lot of people actually do, it's a narrow base of support and can actually throw you off your balance. If your feet run straight down like columns below your hips and pelvis, you have a better base of support and then therefore better balance, just by standing. And I mentioned before with the alignment in a car, pointing your pinky toes straight ahead is also very important for potential wear and tear on your ankles, knees, and your hips. So to keep those pinky toes pointing straight ahead gives you better mobility through your ankles, your knees, and your hips. So it's important. Then when you back your hips up over your heels, you're loading the tissues in the back sides of your legs. You're using your glutes, your hamstrings, and your calves more so than when you're forward on your toes. So it's wonderful. You're strengthening your glutes and your hamstrings and your calves, and who doesn't want a better bum, especially when they age, right? So you're already going to find opportunities where you're standing throughout your day. You're checking out line at the grocery store. You're standing on the sideline of a soccer, game going on. When you're standing, check in. Feet hip distance apart, pinky toes pointing straight ahead, backing the weight up in your heels, and you're already going to give yourself better strength, better mobility, and improve your balance, right? And then therefore more life fit. So when we layer on things like this in our day, we like to call it stacking your life. You're already going to be standing, and so you might as well add this little opportunity to build strength, mobility, and balance within your day. I love it. I think it's a really interesting concept. So let's look at another scenario of where we can become more life fit by stacking our life. So let's look at your footwear. Kind of scary. So what you put on your feet directly affects your strength, mobility, and balance. I think, when cute shoes create a deformed foot, we need to rethink our footwear. So I'm going to show you a sandal that I have versus a clog that I have. So I'm going to talk about the 3 different things that actually make up minimal footwear. And we're going to start with the sole of the foot. So you're going to notice with a minimal shoe, which is what this is called, there's no heel to the shoe. It's totally flat and level. So that's one of the elements that makes up a minimal footwear, minimal shoe. A clog, you're going to see, actually has an elevated heel. So it's as if you're slightly walking downhill. And if you're slightly walking downhill all day long, your ankle is not getting the mobility that it could potentially get. The front chain of your leg is probably overworking unnecessarily. So to eliminate the heel will give you better mobility and ultimately better strength through the rest of the leg. The second element of a minimal shoe is a flexible sole. So you can see with this in particular, I can roll it up into a ball, I can twist it back and forth. There's not a shank in it to inhibit mobility. Unlike a clog, this sucker is not going to bend. It's, rock hard. It's not going to bend at all. So why do we care? Why would you need your sole of your foot to bend and move? So again, when we're talking about building strength, when I step on this shoe and I'm on, an uneven terrain, my foot has to adjust and adapt and become very robust to whatever ground I'm walking on. So as a result, I'm actually strengthening my feet. When your foot's in a very hard shoe and you don't have that ability to feel the ground below your feet, you're missing an opportunity to actually strengthen the bones and the tissues surrounding the foot. So that's number 2. Number 3 of what makes up a minimal shoe is the toe box. It's, the width of your toes, kind of across the big toe to pinky toe. If you look down at your feet and you're not wearing shoes, can you spread your toes out? And then you can kind of measure what that distance is. So if I were wearing this sandal, I could easily spread my toes out and I wouldn't be inhibited by not only material, but also just the distance between big toe to pinky. This clog, it's a little harder to see. It's relatively wide. I give it that much, but if I flip it over, you can see how it tapers to a point. So all these toes are getting a little bit scrunched. So if you're prone to bunions, a lot of times that's a result of your toes being scrunched into your footwear and being kind of pinched, and your foot has to almost look like a hoof to get it into that sort of triangular toe box. So when your feet are kind of squished in there, when you step out of them, and it's been years, your foot does not have a lot of surface area to spread out anymore. It's like lost the ability to do that. So as a result, if you can play around with getting a pair of minimal shoes and work to spread your feet out, you're going to have a better base of support and therefore better balance, right? So to review really briefly, a minimal shoe has no heel. It has a flexible sole and a really wide toe box. All ways to build strength, mobility, and balance starting at your feet. You already have to wear a shoe, and you can choose a shoe that's going to actually help you to age more gracefully. Pretty awesome, right? And therefore become more life fit. If you want to learn about the other 2 points that make up a minimal shoe, I have a link hopefully connected to this video for my Lush Life Starter Guide, and I give you the other 2 points of what makes up a minimal shoe, because there's 2 more. Okay, let's look at one more way how to build strength, mobility, and balance and become more life fit. So we all have to work. A lot of us work at a desk or a workstation. So if you can, let me back up. A lot of people love standing work desks. That's becoming kind of in vogue these days, and I think it's actually a really good option to what we call a dynamic workstation. And what that basically means is you're taking your desk area and you're just creating opportunities to kind of hack your workstation to give you better mobility, strength, and balance. So let's talk about that. So if you have a standing work desk, this could be my standing work desk. I'm going to look at what I'm standing on. If you're wearing a heeled shoe, the first thing you want to do is kick it off. So if you can be barefoot at your standing work desk, that would be great. A lot of standing workstations are on unnatural terrain. They're on like a really hard surface. And so to stand this way for a long period of time, it actually takes us back to the Industrial Revolution, where people stood for long periods of time and as a result had injuries such as varicose vein and low back, pain and injuries as a result. So then we all became, sitting in a chair, which isn't ideal either. It's like we want sort of a happy medium between the two. And I believe that a dynamic workstation is sort of the perfect compromise. So if you're looking at what you're standing on, what I've created, and I actually have it in the lobby of my studio where the computer lives and where I do all my scheduling, is I've created a rock mat. And all this really is a square tile of rocks that I got, at your local home goods store, like a Home Depot. We planted it and glued it to a piece of plywood. We put some mortar to kind of glue it down, and we actually added handles just because they're easier to move this way. But a rock mat is something that you can stand on where it actually mimics natural terrain, quite literally. Where when you stand on this, it's pointy, it's hard, your feet have to move and adapt to this shape. It can feel almost like a little bit like reflexology, so it's like that hurts so good sensation. But it's a really nice way to kind of wake up and strengthen your feet and create some more mobility between the joints and the muscles and the bones, right? So a rock mat. Also, if you do have to stand for hours on end, an anti-fatigue mat is sort of the best way to go. So I'm going to show you mine. It's called a topo mat. It's kind of fancy and a little bit expensive, but even at Bed Bath & Beyond, you can get just like a really standard anti-fatigue mat where it's got some squish to it. So what's cool about the topo mat is you might be able to see there's like a little circle in the middle of it. So if I'm barefoot wearing it, I can work the ball of my foot and arch on this little circle and kind of mobilize my foot while I'm standing at my desk. The top of it, I'm going to turn it sideways, has an incline so that I can put my feet up on this incline and actually get like a calf stretch while I'm standing at my work desk, which is wonderful because then I'm moving my legs and feet around. I'm bringing the blood back up. I'm not going to get that pooling or that edema of fluid down to my feet because I'm moving my feet and my legs around on this mat. So just an option. Now, what would be the opposite of a standing workstation? a sitting on the floor workstation, which doesn't work that often when you have like a traditional office setting. But if you have to work from home, I highly encourage you to practice sitting on the floor. So when you sit in a standard chair, you're outsourcing the work of your core to the seat and the backrest. So when you sit on the floor, you're automatically turning on your core, which is awesome because who doesn't love more core strength, right? So when you're sitting on the ground for any period of time, you're going to end up changing positions. It's just sort of a natural response that occurs in the body. And every time you move positions, that's just another opportunity for your body to gain mobility, your ankles and your knees, your hips, and even your spine. So to sit on the floor is just one more way to, again, gain some mobility through the whole, your entire body, which is a great, great thing. And lastly, the physical act of getting up off the floor looks like a lunge or a squat. And where do we do those activities? Typically at the gym. So instead of actually needing to take a class at the gym for your legs, you sit on the floor and then work to stand up to either grab a glass of water, go to the bathroom. You're building tons of strength through your whole lower chain of your body and as well as some core strength. So who doesn't love that? So sitting on the floor can give you better balance because you're working your core to keep you upright. It works your mobility because you're stretching your hips and your knees and your ankles and your spine by changing positions. And then it builds your strength because every time you have to get up off the floor, which is probably often, it gives your legs an opportunity to build strength. Pretty awesome, right? So let's review how to age gracefully and become life fit without adding a single exercise to your day. So we discussed how to stand. So we went our feet are hip bone distance apart, pinky toes point straight ahead. You're going to back your weight up on your heels, so then you're strengthening the back chain of your body, and you're giving your toes some mobility and a better base of support. We talked about footwear, maybe looking into investing in some minimal shoe wear so that you're not always walking downhill, you're not always walking with really scrunched toes, and every step you take, you have an opportunity to strengthen your feet. And then lastly, your dynamic workstation. Could you put a rock mat down by your feet if you have a standing work desk? Or something like a topo mat where you can play around with your foot angles as you're being productive at your desk. Or could you do the opposite? Could you sit all the way down on the ground, maybe use your coffee table for your laptop to sit on, and could you, gain some mobility through your hips by just physically sitting down, build some core support, which ultimately will help you in your balance. And then every time you have to go to stand up, you're building some awesome strength for your glutes and your hamstrings. And like I mentioned before, as we age, our glutes like to disappear. All right, so hopefully you learned something today. Again, I'm Katie Lush. If you have any questions, feel free to reach me. My website is katielush.com, KATYLUSH.com. You can find me there. You can find me on social media, on Facebook at Lush Living by Katie. You can find me on Instagram at @TheKatieLush. I think that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and thanks again for joining me.